How do you measure the success of a product or a feature? Today, I'm going to be walking us through a practical example using TaskRabbit. We're going to explore some metrics using a framework to evaluate its performance that will help you understand how to define and track the success for a platform like TaskRabbit. This video is tailored for product managers that are looking to sharpen their skills in identifying and measuring product metrics. Also, this video is very important for product managers that are preparing for interviews that test their execution and analytic thinking abilities. But before we get into the details, let's talk about why this use case is just more than a learning exercise, and it's also perfect for preparation for product management interviews. Because many product management interviews are designed to test and evaluate your ability to solve real-world problems. They evaluate how you approach challenges, structure your thinking, and apply data-driven decision making. In particular, product execution interviews often focus on three areas, and this particular use case is going to be touching on two of those three areas. The first area is around goal setting. The interviewer would probably ask you to define the success for a product or a feature. For example, they might ask you, oh, you're the PM for Instagram Reels. How would you measure its success? This type of question tests your ability to think strategically, align the metrics with business objectives, and identify some KPIs or some metrics like user acquisition, engagement, retention to ensure that your metrics match the overall product goals. For this type of interviews, it's important to focus on the clarity and prioritization of your metrics, explaining why some metrics are more critical than others based on the product stage or the business strategy. The second kind of product execution interviews are typically trade-offs. The trade-offs focus on decision making under certain constraints. For example, you may be asked, if improving Instagram Reels engagement metrics impacts Instagram stories negatively, how would you decide which one to prioritize? Now, the goal here is to demonstrate your ability to balance competing objectives and justify your decision while understanding the broader impact of the product and the business. For trade-offs, it's important to structure your approach to evaluate the pros and the cons of each of the options, highlight how you would balance, let's say, short-term costs with long-term benefits, or how you balance engagement with retention, overall gearing towards the business goal. The third type of product execution interviews are typically called root cause analysis. From what I hear, these are usually not asked as much these days, but these questions test your ability to diagnose product issues. For instance, you might be asked, oh, the watch time for Instagram Reels is dropping. What might be causing this, and how would you investigate this problem? So it requires you to break down the problem, to identify potential causes, and outline how you'd validate and disprove them with data and propose a solution of how to move forward. For these particular interviews, it's important to remain systematic and logical. Use data and patterns to guide your reasoning and prioritize your hypotheses effectively. Let's get into the exercise that we're going to be going into today. It's also worth noting that the framework that I'm going to be using in this exercise, I don't take credit for it. It's a framework that I came across during a product management webinar by someone called Ben Air, who is within Maven. I'm going to link Maven in the description box and probably some access to Ben's online presence for you to be able to use and access the framework if you need to. But I don't take credit for this, the content and the thinking approach which the framework guides. All right, so the example that I'm going to be tackling today is goal setting and trade-off for a typical product execution use case. We're not going to be tackling root cause analysis, just goal setting and trade-off. The prompt here is that you're the product manager for TaskRabbit. How would you measure the success for TaskRabbit? In a typical scenario, you want to clarify some of the assumptions that you may have about this scenario. For example, TaskRabbit is a global application that is used in Canada, in US, and I think in the UK as well. So you want to probably clarify where you'll be focused on. And in this case, I'll say I'll focus on TaskRabbit as it is used in Canada. And I'm also going to be focusing on TaskRabbit's profit-making arm, not necessarily the TaskRabbit for Good, which is a social impact program for volunteering and not for profit. So if you have any assumptions about the product or the business, this is the opportunity to clarify those assumptions so that you go into the use case with some level of clarity. Now, once you have your assumptions clarified, the first thing you want to do is to review the product landscape. Like, why does this product exist in the first place? Touching on where you think it is on the maturity life cycle, what are the competitors, the company's unique advantage, how the product generates revenue, and those kind of things that will set the context for why we are even considering an improvement on this product in the first place. It's also important to identify some key stakeholders and players that have interacted with the product or the business, their motivations, and why they are within this ecosystem. So once we've identified the rationale behind the product and the value that the product delivers, then with that, we have a good baseline to be able to define the metrics that we want to measure. So in this case for TaskRabbit, I'm saying it's an online marketplace that connects everyday people with local freelance taskers who can assist with household tasks. Users can come in, post a task, or select it from a list of popular tasks, and then they can find the taskers that can help them perform those tasks within their household. Once the task is done, they get paid and everybody's happy. So the rationale behind TaskRabbit is that it provides customers with immediate help for a variety of tasks within their home, and also gives local freelancers the visibility they may not otherwise have, either online or physically. Capitalized on the large pool of unemployment that was created by the economic recession, so it's a marketplace for local freelancers and the people that need the services for those freelancers in their homes, and they earn their commission based on the transactions that they facilitate on their platform. It's also important to note here that TaskRabbit was acquired by IKEA Group sometimes in 2017, and this acquisition helped IKEA to expand their customer service such that IKEA customers who can afford their services can complete the customer experience after purchasing IKEA furniture. We all know that IKEA is like a furniture in a box service, but again, maybe some complex furniture or some people that do not have the knack for setting up their furniture but like the IKEA furniture, they may be incentive to purchase an IKEA furniture knowing fully well that they can get a local tasker to help them set up the furniture. Also, the acquisition helped IKEA to reach new customers. So customers that would otherwise not have purchased the furniture from IKEA, but at least they could purchase furniture from some other places but leverage the taskers on TaskRabbit to help them set up the furniture. So even if the furniture was not from IKEA, IKEA could make some revenue from the setup of the furnitures from other stores, and also to improve their competitive advantage, because retailers like Amazon were beginning to expand their home goods and installation services, which was also going to pose a threat of competition to IKEA. So those are the major highlights of what had changed with TaskRabbit in the past couple of years. With this, the mission statement for TaskRabbit was transforming the lives by connecting people with local taskers to help with everyday tasks in their home. That's the mission statement. Now, it's important to spend some minutes thinking through the ecosystem players, their primary motivations, and the activities that they carry out that help them to derive the value out of the products that we're accessing. And in the case of TaskRabbit here, I've highlighted 4 major ecosystem players. The first are the customers, people like homeowners that are setting up things in their home, renters, those types of people. For them, the value proposition to use TaskRabbit is about convenience. They're leveraging Rabbit to access skilled taskers for their household tasks, for the things that they need done within their homes. The speed to also get things done is also a value proposition for them, because often within a day or 2 days, they are able to get a tasker that is available to get things done instead of having to wait for very long. So they choose the taskers based on their review and rates. They have options, and also some form of trust with respect to payments. They are able to make payments securely on the platform, and they're able to get refunds if they are not okay with the services. So there's a level of trust that they get versus just relying on a signpost on the streets and hoping that the tasker is good. For them, posting their tasks, searching for taskers, having conversations are the activities that they need to do to unlock the value here. It's also important that when we're thinking about the ecosystem players, we need to think about the ecosystem health metrics for each of the ecosystem players, and there's a time frame to this. So for the customers, you're thinking of how many tasks are started and are successfully completed. maybe within a month, and how many of them are coming back to create new tasks, potentially within a quarter, and the average time it takes for a customer to create a task and then confirm the tasks to be done with the tasker. Speed is one of the value propositions there. So the faster we're able to match tasks with taskers, then the better it is for customers. So when I was thinking about is having household tasks done is not something that happens every day. It's not something that owners or renters get to do often. So the basis by which we measure the health of the customers may not be a daily or even a weekly thing. We may think about it on a quarterly basis, maybe when seasons are changing and people are motivated to change the things within their household. So quarterly, monthly, or potentially even annually seems like a reasonable time to measure the ecosystem health metrics, at least per customer. But overall, we want a lot of activities from all of the customers on a weekly basis. So that's the thinking that came into monthly and quarterly for the customers. Tasks are not things that people need done every single day. Now for taskers, this might be different because we hope that many people are booking taskers, even if the people that are booking those taskers are not booking them as frequently. So for taskers, for them, the value for them to use TaskRabbit is the income that they earn. It's already a marketplace of people that are looking for taskers. So the opportunity for them to earn some income based on tasks that they already do, set their rates and set their schedules flexibly is a value proposition. So there's a demand already and they can supply their services. There's also the ease of task management and payment. They don't have to worry about, you don't have your credit card or fraudulent payment and things like that. TaskRabbit takes ownership of that payment and is simplified. Once the task is done and the customer confirms the completion of the tasker gets paid. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. There's also a trust that is built here based on credibility that the platform gives the taskers. Based on the reviews that it gets, they're also able to establish their trust network. And for them, the things that they need to do in order to get value, this value proposition, is to post their profile and show off their skills and show off what they can do, which will attract customers. And to be able to have a conversation with customers about the details of the task. How do you want this done? Do you have this? Have you bought it? Okay, this is my recommendation. This is how we get things done. And some form of fee advisement, right? Because it's a marketplace that there are many taskers that can complete a task, but being able to also get some guidance on how they can structure their payments and their fees is also something that will help them, so that even though your profile is great, your fee should not be the reason why people do not want to go with you. You might have to make some adjustments into your fee structure. And of course, they can receive their payment. And so for taskers, we want to look at their task acceptance rate. That is the percentage of the tasks that are accepted by taskers, let's say within a week or a month. I put it at a month here because we also understand that taskers have work that they get done outside of TaskRabbit. So the proportion of the tasks that they get done in TaskRabbit, we want that to be a healthy amount, but we acknowledge that they also get work done outside of TaskRabbit. We also want to know the earnings per task on a monthly basis. On a monthly basis, how much on average are they earning? Because that's also going to be an indicator of the fact that the income that they stand to earn on it is attractive. If they don't earn enough on TaskRabbit, then there's no compelling reason for them to be active or to stay. So we want to ensure that there's demand enough for the taskers for them to be able to earn a high income on TaskRabbit. We also want to see their retention rates. How many of them are continuing to earn task over time, let's say on a monthly basis, because again, it's a proof of the fact that there's demand and then the income is reasonable enough for them to continue to accept tasks on TaskRabbit. And their average response time, which is also an indication of their activity. If a customer messages a tasker and they take so long to respond, it's probably because they've abandoned the platform or because they have other venues where their income is higher. So why invest in TaskRabbit? So their response time indicates that they are expecting something from the platform and they are able to serve their customers very well. And then the ratings that they receive, because as a trust network, it's important that we're able to assess the ratings that they are receiving. So the number of ratings helps us know that we are building more trust. So the next category of ecosystem players that we're going to be looking at is home services partners. So these are like your furniture retailers, your electronics retailers, cleaning services, moving companies. So think about service providers that already offer a service that TaskRabbit has the potential to complement. The value proposition for them is a simplified customer experience for post-purchase services. So if a customer purchases the services, the ability for the customer to complete the service experience on TaskRabbit is a value proposition for them. This also differentiates them from their competitors. So for example, a Home Depot that allows me to buy something but offers TaskRabbit as a way to complement my service to set up or to install the AC that I purchased. They help me complement my experience. So I'm more incentivized to buy from Home Depot if I know that I'm going to be able to leverage TaskRabbit to set up my AC versus buying from somewhere else that doesn't incentivize me to complete my purchase service. And of course, this encourages some sales. Of course, this also builds loyalty for them. And for them to access this value proposition, the integration with TaskRabbit, if they are an online home services provider, is a way for them to assess this value, so that once users are making purchase of their service, they can complement that purchase with a TaskRabbit service if it's necessary. And if it's not online, the ability for them to co-market and collaborate with TaskRabbit is the way users will be aware that they can complement their services with TaskRabbit. For them, what we're going to be measuring their health on is the attachment rate on a monthly basis. What is the percentage of purchases that are paired with TaskRabbit services each month for each home service provider? For example, what's the percentage of purchases on Home Depot that have a TaskRabbit service associated with it, and is that growing at an healthy rate? We're also going to be looking at the revenue contributed from partnerships per month. If TaskRabbit is making 100% of revenue, what percentage of that is coming from partners and partnership integration? Because similar to the taskers, if there is no revenue coming from the partner service providers, it might be an indication that TaskRabbit is not valuable for them. Now, the last category of ecosystem players that we're going to be considering is TaskRabbit platform itself, the enablers of the marketplace. For them, they earn revenue from commissions on transactions that they enable. And with this revenue, it means that they are also able to grow and reach new markets and partners and customers that they otherwise would not have reached if they didn't come to search on TaskRabbit. So with marketing and partnerships, TaskRabbit platform is able to capture new customers that purchase services from the home services partners that did not come directly into TaskRabbit. So for example, I purchased an AC from Home Depot, and Home Depot offers me a complimentary service to set up my AC with a tasker on TaskRabbit. So I automatically become a customer of TaskRabbit at that point, but not because I went searching for TaskRabbit, but because I went to buy an AC from Home Depot. So there's a growth opportunity, and it means that subsequently, if I want to do another setup in my home, I can just go to TaskRabbit directly. So there's a growth opportunity here. And of course, the insights that they are able to leverage from the data can help to improve TaskRabbit, the platform. Now, for them to be able to assess this value proposition, the activities that they need to do is to, one, select reliable taskers to make sure that there's a good balance of supply and demand and keep the platform healthy. There's also partnership opportunities, marketing, and platform support overall to ensure that TaskRabbit is able to deliver on its entire value proposition for all the ecosystem players, and then leads to opportunity for engagement and retention of taskers, of customers, and the home service partners. And for TaskRabbit, the platform, the health metrics we're going to be measuring here is the average revenue generated per task on a daily basis. We also are going to be looking at the total revenue generated, because hey, we're a business and we need revenue to keep us in business. So that's a quick rundown of all the ecosystem players that we've identified. The next thing that we want to do is to identify our North Star metric and the guardrails within that metric. And our North Star metric is the metric that we want to track overall that impacts all the ecosystem players, such that activities from the ecosystem players can directly contribute to our North Star metrics. This is the metric that we're looking at that we can categorically say improves our platform. For the North Star metric, I've identified as the total completed tasks. We're going to be looking at that within a weekly time frame. And how we do this is to look at how does this indicate a positive metric for each of the ecosystem players. That's what we're looking at as the strength of the North Star metric. Total completed tasks indicates that customers are meeting their needs of task completion. It also signals that taskers are being engaged regularly, because hey, if tasks are being completed, then it must be the taskers that are completing the task. It also signals that partner inventory are being bought and assembled code or setup. Similar to taskers, the service providers may also be having their work completed and their customer needs met if the total tasks completed per week is increasing. And lastly, it drives revenue for TaskRabbit platform. So that's why I think this ecosystem metric is a strong one. It's important to identify some drawbacks in these ecosystem metrics, because the drawbacks are going to help to set the guardrail metrics or the counter metrics that we want to measure and keep an eye on in case things go wrong. But the potential drawbacks of the North Star metrics. The first thing is the total completed task. It could increase from new customers or one-time customers, even if the quality of service is low and does not lead to repeat customers. So it means that we might be seeing an increase, but it does not mean that that increase is coming from repeat customers. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. The second thing is that the total completed task could incentivize small and quick tasks, even when longer ones are more difficult and valuable and take longer. So for example, if we have 100 tasks and those 100 tasks are, I don't know, hitting a nail in the wall, are those high value tasks? They are quicker, they are smaller. Are those high value? Do they indicate high revenue? So that's something that we need to also keep an eye on. The last drawback I've identified here is that the total completed task does not directly capture overall revenue and profitability. To my earlier point around hitting a lane in the wall may be a $1 task, but if we have 100 $1 tasks, are those much better than having 10 $50 tasks? So it's important that we also think about the revenue and the volume and the value of these completed tasks, so that we don't have a false sense of growth by having so many total completed tasks. So that's the critique on this North Star metric. The next thing I'm going to go into is to think about the guardrails and the counter metrics that we need to have in place to address the drawbacks of the North Star metric. Because we think we're comfortable with these North Star metrics. However, there are some drawbacks that we need to keep an eye on to make sure that we are addressing the North Star metric in a healthy way and not over optimizing for the North Star metric in a way that impacts some other metrics that are important to us. Okay, now to the guardrail metrics. So the first counter metrics that I have identified here is the inflation adjusted spend per task. That helps to address the balance between volume and profitability to make sure that at least the completed tasks are highly profitable. So if the average spend per task is too low, it means that it erodes our profit margin, task quality may be low, and we cannot have sustainable growth, because if our revenue is low, then we cannot grow. But if it's too high, then it means that we have maybe fewer tasks that are being completed. And it may also mean that there is some dissatisfaction with our customers because we are charging a lot for the tasks. If taskers are pricing a lot, our revenue may be high, but our customers may not be happy, and then our customer base may reduce. So this is why we need to balance the inflation adjusted revenue spend by the number of tasks that are being completed. We don't want it too low where we are not profitable, and we don't want it too high where we are not affordable. The second counter metrics that we're going to be keeping an eye on is the tasker retention rate. So tasker retention rate is how many of our taskers are coming back to close tasks. And also, I'm not including the customer retention rate here because, again, like we identified, the tasks that customers need completed within their home may not be on a daily and a weekly basis. So the retention rate for customers on TaskRabbit may actually be on a quarterly or even annual basis, because not everybody is fixing things in their home every day or every week or even every month. So I'm not including a customer retention rate here because I think it's too much of a lagging indicator if we cannot measure it on a daily, week, or even weekly basis. So I'm looking at counter metrics that we can keep an eye on a very short frequency of time that is not too far for us to measure. And I don't think that customer retention rate on TaskRabbit can be measured on a daily or weekly basis or even a monthly basis. So I'm not including that as one of our counter metrics to measure. Granted, it means that we may be having a lot of completed tasks from one time or customers and not many repeat customers. But that's also something to note as one of the drawbacks of our business in its first place. But tasker retention rate, even if the tasks are being completed by one-time customers, at least the taskers are getting enough volume of work to be done. So for the tasker retention rate, we don't want it too low as well, because if the retention rate is low, it means that there are fewer tasks to go around all the taskers, and we're not getting enough tasks, even if it's from one-time customers, and it means that there may be delay in the task completion if the taskers are not on the platform, they are not retaining, they're not coming, so there might be delays in responding to customers, and they may not take TaskRabbit seriously because they're not getting enough tasks anyways. But if it's too high, we may actually risk burnout. The quality of services may also be impacted, because if they are coming back and they are closing so many tasks, let's say 5 or 10 tasks on a daily basis, it may lead to burnout. So we want to just make sure that our tasker retention rate is at a healthy balance, such that the demand and the supply of tasks is right for our taskers. So those are the things that we will look at when we're looking at the counter metrics, those two to keep an eye on, to make sure that we have a healthy enough platform. Once we have done the counter metrics, the next thing that we now need to decide on is which ecosystem looks like a healthy ecosystem for us to focus on in order to improve the North Star metric. And this is an example. This doesn't have to be the option that you go for. This is just my own walkthrough of this example. You may pick another ecosystem player to focus on based on your own reasons and your own decision and whatever you think works for you. Most times in interviews, there's no right or wrong. They're just looking at your thinking approach, how you justify and explain your reasoning. In the real world, you need to be a bit more precise, but in the real world, it's also understandable that you are part of this business. So you're not just making a decision on a whim without understanding the business and the context. So those are two different things. So I'm approaching this as someone that is just looking at TaskRabbit from the outside. I don't know enough about the business or what they've done or not done, or even if they've tried this before. So those are the things to keep in mind when you're walking through your example. In the real world, you have context. You have history with the organization. In an interview, they're just looking at your thinking approach. Okay? So for me, I'm focusing on the home services partners. My rationale is this. One, they have the unique ability to create more tasks by providing customers with ready-made reason to book a TaskRabbit service with their services. So Home Depot has like how many thousands of sales that is happening on a daily basis. Those are potential tasks to be completed. So they can give their customers a ready-made reason to book TaskRabbit service with their services. So there is a ready market. The second reason why I'm focusing on the home service provider is that partners could also help TaskRabbit expand our service offering for more tasks and increase the volume of the tasks completed on a weekly basis for that reason. The partnerships give TaskRabbit access to more customers who would otherwise not have come up and drive the demand for TaskRabbit. So that's my major reason. They have a ready market, they have ready customers, and their integration helps them to complete the service experience. So there's an incentive for them to actually have TaskRabbit complement their services. Once you've identified the ecosystem player you want to focus on, let's say for 3 to 6 months, what you want to do then is to map out the steps in the customer journey that can lead to that task completion. Like, what does this ecosystem player need to do as steps for them to be able to lead to the task completion goal that we've set as a North Star metric? One, they need to be identified and onboarded into TaskRabbit. There needs to be some integration between TaskRabbit and the ecosystem players like Home Depot, Best Buy, whoever it is. There has to be some form of integration such that when customers go and purchase their service, they are aware, either online or offline, that there's a TaskRabbit complement to this service and there's an incentive for them to complete their service experience with TaskRabbit. There has to be some form of co-branding or co-marketing between TaskRabbit and these ecosystem players, such that when you think Home Depot, you also think TaskRabbit to complement your service. When you think of Best Buy, you think of TaskRabbit. And there is also the service that the partner needs done, their business, and the task completion, the actual completion of the task. so that they can derive the value, earn their revenue, and the task is completed, and some form of feedback and improvement where our users can provide feedback such that even the home service provider can decide whether, oh, maybe these kinds of services should not put on TaskRabbit, or we should complement this service with this, or most times when users do use this service and they complete on TaskRabbit, they are likely to buy this. So that feedback and continuous improvement loop is also important and necessary for the partners to also improve their services and for TaskRabbit to improve their services. What we will then do is, because we've identified the ecosystem player I want to focus on, we've identified the activities, we want to look at what are the sub goals within this focus for, let's say, next 3 to 6 months, because we've identified our North Star metric. But you are saying for us to improve our North Star metrics, this is the ecosystem player I want to improve on, and these are the goals I want to achieve in order to improve on this metric. So for this potential goal, the first thing I'm mapping out here is that we want to increase the number of active partners and partnership with TaskRabbit, so that more partners means more tasks, means more potential tasks to be completed. We also want to reduce the onboarding time for new partners, such that when partners come in, within a click, they are already well integrated and well set up in TaskRabbit, and their customers are able to access TaskRabbit services as a complement to their services. We also want to increase the number of partner-driven task completion rate, meaning that I want to make sure that the tasks that are completed by partner are also increasing, because now we're going to have TaskRabbit having tasks from partners and also having tasks from users. So we want to make sure that the tasks that users are bringing in directly are completed, but we also want to make sure that the tasks that are being brought by partners from external users are also completed. So those are the goals that we want to improve on. And so we have to rank these goals based on, one, the impact on the North Star metric and our ability to be able to influence that metric within our team in the time frame that we decided. So this is also my own ranking of the ability to influence and the impact. The first one, which is increase the number of active partners, I ranked it as high as our ability to influence, and I also ranked it as a high when it comes to impact, because more partners means more tasks. Think about just one partner integration, and even if you are able to lock in 1% of the tasks for a Home Depot branch, so that's why I consider it a high impact on our North Star metric. And I think we have the ability to influence it because we have a ready market of taskers on TaskRabbit. Partners do not lose anything by having TaskRabbit complement their services. If anything, they gain something. So I think our ability to influence that is quite high. The second goal that I have here, which is reducing the onboarding time, I ranked it as a medium because I think we have the ability to influence it, but I also ranked it as a low on the impact on the North Star metric, because I think the onboarding time for partners it doesn't really do much when it comes to improving the total completed tasks. And increased partner-driven tasks, I ranked it as a high on the impact because more tasks completed is high, but when it comes to ability to influence it, we really can't do much about users' choices to have TaskRabbit complement their tasks. So there's a lot that we cannot control in that transaction. The home service provider can offer TaskRabbit as a complementary service to their user, but the decision is still ultimately up to the user, and I think that we have lesser impact on that compared to us having more partners. So more partners is hopefully going to make up for us not having direct impact on the user's choice to use TaskRabbit when they purchase a service. And so that's how I've defined the metrics that we want to focus on in the next, let's say, 3 to 6 months. So up until this point, we've identified some business context and identified the product rationale, the users, the value. We've identified the mission statement for the product, which is TaskRabbit. And the mission here is to transform lives by connecting people with local taskers to help with everyday tasks. We've identified our 4 key ecosystem players and the value proposition of TaskRabbit to them, the things that they need to do to unlock that value, and identified key health metrics for each of the ecosystem players to keep an eye on to make sure that we have a healthy balance of the ecosystem players. We've also identified our North Star metric, which is the metric that we think we need to focus on that impacts all of the ecosystem players. On a weekly basis, we've critiqued this North Star metric and we also identified the strengths. guys. And based on our critique of this North Star metric, we've been able to identify some counter metrics that will make sure that while we are very focused, hyper focused on this North Star metric, we have a good eye on some other metrics that if they go too high or too low, they may negatively impact our North Star metric and our overall business goal. We've also identified our team's focus for the next 3 to 6 months. What are the goals that we want to focus on, and for which ecosystem player do we want to focus on that would ultimately improve the likelihood of us meeting our North Star metric goal. Those are the things that we've highlighted up until this point. This is a good point for us to pause. I'm going to have a part 2 of this video that now goes into the trade-off, question, and opportunity for this use case. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.